What is going on, guys? Shaggy here with Reddit Hot Sauce, coming at you with another Ask Reddit video. Ex-prisoners of Reddit, what was the scariest thing you saw whilst on the inside? Let's launch right into this one. And hey, throw me some hot sauce love and hit that subscribe button right now so I can continue bringing you great Reddit videos just like this one. Go ahead, hit that button now, I'll wait. Alright, let's kick it into gear. I did a couple of years when I was young and dumb. The craziest shit I saw was actually in the county jail and not the state prison. The county jail is right on the Texas/Mexico border, so there were a lot of Hispanics. What was weird was the Hispanics born in America and the Mexicans from Mexico absolutely hated each other. I saw a Hispanic from Texas heat up a bowl of water until it was boiling in the microwave. We had microwaves in the tank. And he then proceeded to throw the boiling water on a Mexican from Mexico's face and then beat the ever-loving shit out of him. That dude's screams will haunt me forever. I also saw a guy take a blade from a small pencil sharpener, tie it to a toothbrush, and then slice a guy's face from ear to ear while he was sleeping. The guy lived, but it looked like a murder scene. These are the most gruesome ones I've read so far in this thread. My God. Hair grease? That shit will melt your face off. Not in prison, but in the jail tank for a few days for a speeding violation with some booze. I got out the next day. Gangs of felons would hang around in there and wait for guys to get sleepy and do nasty things to them when they would doze off. The walls were solid concrete, no camera, only a small window in the door with about 40 men inside. They would only check on us every 3 to 4 hours, or if someone started hollering. Use your imagination. This was Harris County lockup in Houston over a decade ago. Like Wet Willies and Wedgies? Those can be pretty nasty. If I lean over, I leave myself open for Wet Willies, Wedgies, and the dreaded Rear Admiral. Sure, kid, Wet Willies. That is what they were doing. Now go watch SpongeBob. Wait, so what sort of stuff did they do? The usual weird BS, sizing you up for a bitch before you get processed by the guards. Something else I remember was an old guy around 70-ish talking about the weird sex stuff he did visiting a whorehouse in Germany, about spending the night with an 80-year-old hooker with no teeth, but he could have been making it up. He was missing a few fingers. I don't think I've ever shared that one. I just remember scooching my butt into the corner of the cell just as hard as possible so nobody was behind my back. So they did nothing, it sounds like? The Wet Willies sounded worse. A friend of mine did a short stint. From what he told me, he was supposed to get paperwork detailing his charges before he got to prison, but did not. This made the other prisoners suspicious as they believed he was a snitch, was trying to hide the fact from them, and they threatened to beat him. An old acquaintance of his was in there and assured my friend that he had nothing to worry about, as they had been threatening him for months and nothing had happened. That night, while my friend was making his bed, a few prisoners ran into his acquaintance's cell and beat him to within inches of his life. They were bouncing the guy's head off of the concrete to the point that my friend could hear it. My buddy says that's the moment that scared him straight. Almost every time I've heard of this, it's to check and see if someone's a sex offender or a child molester. A lot of people will proudly pull out their papers on yard once they get into reception for people to see. But from my experience, people don't give a shit and a lot of times never ask to see them. Also, like when I went, you're given your papers at county jail before you are transported to the intake prison. Everybody knows who the chomos are. They're the ones that go to church from AdsSeg. They all go to church, every one of them. Can you elaborate more on this? I don't know prison lingo that well. Chomo equals child molester. AdsSeg equals administrative segregation. AdsSeg is the most restricted environment in a prison. Church is an hour every week for them to be out of their cells. Plus, it usually looks good to a parole board / higher ups. There are questions about the sincerity of those that find religion while in prison. Not me, but my husband was in prison as a young adult. He said that they had a way of checking your ego in the spot he was at. The toughest guys would come up to you on your first day and ask how many push-ups you could do. If you were smart, you would just sort of blow it off or laugh it off and move on. If you were a stupid show-off or had something to prove, you would claim a large number or talk yourself up. If you did that, then they would be all friendly and be like, oh, let's see it. So the poor guy would do as many push-ups as they could. The tough guys would gas the new guy up, acting friendly, pushing him to do more. They acted impressed and joked around. Then as soon as the new guy had done as many push-ups as possible, they would jump him and beat him up. He would be helpless to resist because he maxed himself out on push-ups. Afterwards, any guy with an ego was normally really quiet for the remainder of their stay. I have a friend who used to work in corrections. They had an inmate who had a habit of assaulting and raping other inmates. This guy was serving a life sentence for murdering his grandparents, raping grandma before and after the murder, and mutilating the corpses. He had been in since the 1980s and nobody had been able to live with him because he was such a dangerous maniac. They decided to bunk him with a huge guy who was in for a ton of gang-related violent offenses. My friend said that Department of Corrections figured that since the new cellmate was 30 years younger and covered in muscles, he would be able to handle himself. Within the first few days, the big cellmate asked for protective custody and claimed he had been raped. It seems that the old rapey murderer had made a bet with his new cellmate that whoever could do the most push-ups would get the better bunk in the cell. After our young gang member cranked out a ton of push-ups, he was so tired that he couldn't stop the beating and rape that followed. Last I heard, old rapey murderer had a room to himself. The rape was never prosecuted because the gang member was unwilling to testify because he couldn't risk people finding out. They had an inmate who had a habit of assaulting and raping other inmates? That is a bad habit. They say that if you do something 30 days in a row, it will become a habit. At least it's not smoking. What the f? I was in jail once waiting to see a judge. They'd moved me to 3 different jails in 3 days for some reason. I wasn't a troublemaker and was only in for driving on a suspended license. But I am big and scary looking. Anyways, when they transferred me to court, I was handcuffed to someone serving life and he was Aryan Brotherhood. I'm Hispanic, but look completely white and have a shaved head. He told me blacks were greenlit and that I had to swing on sight if I saw a black man within reach. I was required to fight him or they would beat or kill me later. It was scary, and luckily the COs were aware and kept everyone separate until the green light ended. Hey man, you gotta swing at these black guys or we are gonna murder you. God damn man, I'm here for a DUI. Exactly, only worse, I got pulled over for expired tags, LOL. What are you in for? Expired tags? Good, we could use a guy like you in the Brotherhood. This is a hidden gem in this thread. Okay, so I got a DUI in a neighboring county. I was going through a rough patch in life, so I said F it and never showed up to court. I figured catch me if you can. Well, fast forward a couple of months and I end up getting into some shit and charged in my county. Boom, extradition. I end up in the neighboring county's prison. Rough stop to put it lightly. So one night in my cell, which was on the second floor, and they bring some new guy in. Well, this guy keeps asking for shit, phone calls, food, and just generally being a pain in the ass. So at one point, a CO comes up to talk to him. The CO leaves, and this guy is freaking out. He's screaming and yelling and banging on the door to his cell. He called me a n***. He just keeps screaming this, and the banging intensifies. It's now boom, boom, boom with him still screaming. Now, when the doors are closed and locked, there's about a 2-inch gap between the door and the wall. That's what he was screaming through. I see a CO walk up and hear, he called me a n***. The CO had walked up, waited for him to scream, and sprayed mace down the man's throat through the crack and just walked away. So for the next 45 minutes, I can hear this guy gasping for air. It didn't sound good. They finally came back, drug him out of his cell and down the hall to this little shower. They cuffed him to the shower and ran water on him for a couple of hours, gasping the whole time. They finally ended up taking him to the hospital. I want to say Johnny Knoxville, guy from Jackass, said it was hands down the most painful thing he's ever experienced. This is a man that's dived on a skateboard toilet, down a ramp and landed flat on the ground, sneezed his eye out of his socket twice, and has broke his penis with a dirt bike. And pepper spray was a thing that got him?